Do you tell people when enough is enough? Or do you let people walk all over you? Today we're going to talk about why setting strong boundaries will change your life. Hi, I'm Amanda Pratt, licensed clinical social worker with Imagine Life Therapy. I run a small private practice in St. Petersburg, Florida, specializing in helping people with chronic illness overcome the ups and downs and management of their disease. Today we're going to be talking about setting strong and healthy boundaries. If you've ever seen the movie Yes Man, you know that we can easily end up saying yes to everyone and everything in our lives. This can lead to us having a hard time defining our boundaries, and we often lose ourselves in the process of trying to make everyone happy. So today we're going to talk about what are boundaries, how do you know if they're healthy or unhealthy, and why are they so important? The first thing to recognize is whether you have healthy boundaries or unhealthy boundaries. Do you find that you keep others at a distance? Maybe you isolate yourself. Maybe you only have one or two close friends, and even those friends, you don't really tell them what you need or what you want. Maybe you have a hard time asking for help. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe you have a hard time saying no to people. Maybe you give personal information with people that you've only just met, or let them borrow your belongings, or loan them money. Maybe you're over-invested in other people's problems. Sometimes we do this because we're either worried that people aren't going to accept us for who we are, or we feel like we can't trust people to understand what we're going through. Either way, this impacts our relationships, it impacts how we feel about ourselves, and sometimes when we let those boundaries go, it's really hard to go back and draw that line in the sand. We're often taught as young kids what physical boundaries are. We are taught to respect each other's personal space bubble, so to speak. But we aren't taught about all these other different boundaries that we can set for ourselves in order to live healthier and happier lives. Healthy boundaries actually help us get our needs met in relationships because we're telling people what we need in order to feel accepted and validated. They increase our capacity for compassion. We have less anger and resentment toward people. We actually are creating a space in which we can explore and nourish our mind, body, and spirit and properly care for ourselves. And this is especially important when you get diagnosed with a chronic illness because often you really have to have strong boundaries with people and you have to be able to communicate what your needs are. If we don't set good boundaries, what happens? Well, we end up feeling taken advantage of by people close to us. We get burned out. We get stressed out. We end up being workaholics or people pleasers. And we can also end up being socially isolated or just feeling misunderstood by everyone around us. Now, boundaries are the rules and principles by which we live. They are the limits that we're willing to accept in how others treat us, and they're the limits that we're willing to go to in how we treat other people. These are important because this is what allows us to live our best lives and to be the best version of ourselves that we can for the people around us. And it also puts us in a space where we can thrive and grow into even better people in the future. Number one, our physical boundaries. Our physical boundaries are anything that surrounds our physical body and also our spaces and places that we feel safe in. So this could be a room that you sleep in. It could be your car. It could be your office at work. Any space that feels intimately yours is something you want to set a boundary around. Healthy physical boundaries include an awareness of what is appropriate and what's not in different settings and with different people in different types of relationships. So this includes communicating your own boundaries as well as accepting when someone else communicates theirs and recognizing and respecting their boundaries. When a child says, "No, Grandma, I don't want to give you a kiss," we often force them to do it because we think we're doing what's best for them. But really what we're doing is teaching them that physical boundaries are porous. Physical boundaries are something that other people don't have to respect. You just do what other people say that you should do. And we don't want to teach kids that. So what we need to do when a child says, I don't want to hug you, I don't want to kiss you, is we need to say, listen, I'm sorry that I crossed that physical boundary, and next time I will respect that. I'm not going to hug you if you don't want me to. I'm not going to kiss you if you don't want me to. Only if you say it's okay. Physical boundaries are violated when someone touches us when or where or how we don't want them to, or they invade our personal space without permission. So going into our room without permission, going into our purse without permission, going into our office without permission. These are boundaries that we definitely want to communicate to people so that we can feel safe, not only in our bodies, but in those spaces that we deem our safe spaces. The next type of boundary is sexual boundaries. Now, sexual boundaries fall within our physical boundaries because it's usually involving part of our body, but it can also include emotional and intellectual aspects of our sexuality as well. So a healthy sexual boundary is when we have a mutual understanding and respect of the limitations and desires between sexual partners. This includes when and where and how we want to be touched intimately, as well as how we want to be spoken to during intimate moments. Or it could be setting a limitation or a boundary around environments or situations where we don't want to have sexual contact with somebody. This could be sexual comments when we're walking by in a public place. It could be someone staring at us in a way that feels violating to us. And it could be someone trying to get us to engage in sexual acts, either in spaces or places or around people, certain environments that we're not comfortable with. Sexual boundaries, therefore, can become violated when someone touches us or does anything to us sexually or intimately that we don't want them to. If they try to pressure you to engage in a sexual act or to engage in a sexual act in a place that you're not comfortable with. Or it could be, again, the way someone looks at you, comments they make about your body or certain parts of your body. Intellectual boundaries are the next kind of boundary, and I find that intellectual boundaries and emotional boundaries are ones that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Intellectual boundaries surround our thoughts and our ideas. So healthy intellectual boundaries are when we respect other people's ideas and we're aware of the limits around discussing those ideas. Intellectual boundaries become violated when someone dismisses or belittles your ideas, or you dismiss or belittle the thoughts or ideas of others. Now, this comes up a lot, especially today with all of the controversy around politics. I think what's important to know about our intellectual boundaries is that we can sit in the same space as someone and still maintain our own beliefs and respect their beliefs and ideas. Emotional boundaries, again, can also be tricky, but these are boundaries that we set around our feelings. Now, healthy emotional boundaries include limitations on what we're going to share with people, what we're not going to share, and when we're not going to share it, what kind of information we're going to share, whether we're going to share personal information or not so personal information. For example, if you're in a relationship or a friendship with someone, a healthy way to share personal information about yourself is to do it gradually. But sometimes people will meet someone the first day and they'll share their whole life story or really intimate personal details. And that is too porous of a boundary. We want to have something a little more balanced. Emotional boundaries become violated, again, when someone criticizes or belittles or invalidates another person's feelings. So I often see this in relationships or even in friendships when someone tries to communicate how they feel about something and the other person responds by saying, "You're just being too sensitive." Not only does that invalidate the other person's feelings, but it's going to make them less likely to want to share personal information with you in the future. The next type of boundary we're going to talk about are material boundaries. These are boundaries around finances, money, possessions. More specifically, this can include what we're willing to lend to people in terms of material objects or even money, how we want others to treat our possessions, and limits around favors that we do for people or services or labor that we offer to people. Healthy boundaries surrounding material and financial objects involve setting limits with what you're willing to share with people and with who you're willing to share them. For example, it could be okay to lend a car to someone that you really know very well, but not to someone that you just met, right? It can also involve setting limits on how we do favors for other people or how many favors we're willing to do. And sometimes this also includes when someone does a specific job or service for work and then people close to them want them to do it for them for free as a favor. This can often be taken advantage of. Material boundaries are often violated when someone steals or damages your possessions, when they pressure you to give them or lend them something that you're not comfortable with, or if they're constantly asking for favors or expecting you to work for free. Next type of boundary, and our last boundary, this one again a lot of people have trouble with, are time boundaries. So it's really good to set boundaries around your time, because a lot of times when people don't, we tend to become what are known as workaholics. We want to set boundaries around how we use our time, who or what we give our time to, and how much of our time is dedicated to certain tasks or spending with certain people. So to have healthy time boundaries, we have to set aside enough time for all of the different aspects of our life. So this includes work, relationships, hobbies, things that we enjoy, spending time with the people we care about. This time dispersion has to be balanced in a way that allows you to get your individual needs met in every area of your life. These boundaries can become violated when another person demands too much of your time. It could be when someone doesn't properly value your time, such as how much you're getting paid, or whether or not they're asking you to do a favor and how long that favor would last for, or if they're paying you for it, or if they're expecting it for free. When we don't properly allocate our time for our needs to be met, and again, this is seen in people who work like 18 hours a day, they're not spending any time on self-care, or even sometimes getting their basic needs met, like eating appropriately, sleeping appropriately, getting exercise. That can be really unhealthy, and that can actually lead to physical health conditions as well. Now that we know that our boundaries need to be set, how do these actually lead us to live healthier, happier lives? Well, research actually shows us that if we have healthy boundaries, we are actually more compassionate people. We're less likely to get angry. We're less likely to feel resentful of other people. And we tend to be able to find more joy in life because we can focus on the positive. We can see the positive aspects of everything that we're doing. Now, something to keep in mind, you've heard me say these words a couple times through this video and in the blog post, rigid and porous boundaries. These are two things to be aware of. We can typically have a combination of different types of boundaries in different areas of these aspects of our lives. So it's good to do an inventory through each of these different types of boundaries and determine whether your boundaries are healthy or rigid or porous. Healthy is right in the middle. Rigid is when we kind of retract. We don't share personal information. We isolate ourselves. We don't spend time with other people. We're kind of more strict with our time, our materials, our physical and emotional and intellectual selves. And then on the other aspect of the spectrum, the other end of the spectrum, Porous boundaries are when we give too much of people. We're too open. We share our personal information right away. We lend people all of our belongings even though we barely know them. We give too much of ourselves. We say yes to everything as opposed to saying no to everything. We want to be right in the middle. We want to say yes to things that are appropriate for us and fit within our boundaries and our limitations. And we want to say no to things that feel uncomfortable to us or don't fit within our beliefs and our values. So when we do this, we're actually taking charge of our time. We're taking charge of ourselves. We're telling people when they've gone too far. We're more in tune with our personal, emotional, intellectual needs, and we have more fulfilling relationships because of this, because we're communicating openly to people. Simply put, if you have healthy boundaries and you have strong boundaries and you're confident in those, it's going to lead to a healthier, happier, more joyful existence. I hope you got something out of this today. If you watched this video or read my blog and you thought, man, I really need to do some work on some of these boundaries, and you don't know where to start, if you're in the state of Florida, I might be able to help you. I do work around boundaries with almost all of my clients. And if you're in the state of Florida, I have openings for online sessions as well as in-person sessions in my St. Petersburg office. So please feel free to click on the link in the blog post and set up your 15-minute video consultation or phone consultation. And I'm happy to discuss with you how we can start making some changes. Thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you later.